this video, I'm going to teach you the most common questions that are asked in accounts payable interviews, and I'm going to give you everything you need to know to be ready to ace an accounts payable interview. So fundamentally, in this video, you're going to learn a few things. Firstly, you're going to learn how to answer the most common questions that are asked in the account payable interviews. I'm also going to show you the errors that could cost you the job, the things that people say in interviews that are wrong, and the places where you could score badly by not preparing very well. I'm going to show you the technical knowledge you need and help you plan answers to the technical questions about accounts payable that you'll have to know before the interview. I'm going to show you how you can show off your skills and experience effectively to convince them that you're ready for this role. And also, I'm going to teach you how you can plug the gaps in your knowledge and experience before the interview. You need to know what you don't know so you can work on it so that when you go for the interview, you're really well prepared and you're ready to ace it. So let's start with the first question that could come up, which is what knowledge and experience do you have with Excel or spreadsheet? Now, this is a question you absolutely don't want to get wrong. They want reassurance that you have the skills that are going to be required for the job. And so let's start by looking at the knowledge that you need to have and you need to demonstrate and reassure them that you've got in the interview. So the fundamental things with Excel that are going to be really important in accounts payable are the ability to use formulae, the ability to use pivot tables, filters, and to do reconciliations. Now, if you've got those skills, fantastic, make sure you mention them. If you don't have those skills, you need to learn those. And to be honest, you could learn all those things in one day. If you just put aside one whole day and practice them and learn them, you could actually do it. If you don't have these skills, my top tips are to take a course. Just type into Google free Excel course. You'll find a great course that you can do the whole course. You'll develop all these skills. If you want to go one step further, you can get certified. Microsoft offers certifications. You can do an exam. Once you have the certification for the rest of your life, anyone asks about spreadsheets or Excel, you can just waive this certificate and that will shut down the questions and give them the reassurance they need. So make sure you can mention all of these things. So let's prepare a good answer that demonstrates all the skills that they are looking for. So the first thing you do in this question is you just make a clear statement. So Excel is an essential skill for an accounts payable clerk to have. Show that you consider this to be really important and that you're confident enough to say that this is an important skill because you're confident that you have it. The next thing you do, simple sentence, I am proficient in the fundamentals of Excel, so that's very reassuring, including skills such as, and then list the key things that they are looking for. Spreadsheet creation, filtering, pivot tables, use of formulae, and say I can perform reconciliation calculations. If you say all of that, they are going to be really happy that you have the skills that are required. If you don't have these skills, go get them. And the next thing you do is you demonstrate how you have those skills. So you could either say A, I can evidence these skills by the completion of an Excel course, go do that course, get a certificate, could even be a free course. It just shows you've taken the time, you've actually bothered to learn this. Or if you've got some work experience, say I developed these skills in a previous role while working as, talk about your previous work experience and mention all those things that you can do because you did them in your previous job. And if you do it this way, you have a fantastic answer and they'll be really happy on your knowledge of spreadsheets and they'll put a big tick in the box and you have passed one key aspect of the interview. Next question is what bookkeeping software experience do you have? This question is going to be answered in very similar ways to the previous question, just particularized to bookkeeping. And so let's think about it as a pyramid, where the higher up the pyramid you get, the better your answer becomes. So the worst answer is to say, I don't have any experience with bookkeeping. And if this is an entry-level position where they're saying it's a trainee job and they'll give you all the training, that's not a terrible answer. Otherwise, that's going to really hurt you. If you don't actually have experience with bookkeeping software, you want to try and get some experience, I'm going to show you how you can do that, and be self-taught. Just practice it and learn it. You can get free trials, you can have a go at it. The next best answer is to say that you've worked with a very similar system, because if you're really good at one type of bookkeeping software, learning a new one is going to be very, very easy. It's just the same functions, but in different places and different buttons to press. But fundamentally, the principles are the same. You'll learn it really quickly. The answer is to say that you've got experience on the exact program. And if you speak to someone before your interview, often when you look at the job advert, there'll be a contact. You may want to contact them and ask what bookkeeping software they use. So if you know that that's the one that you've got experience on, you can say, I use exactly the same software and I'm really good at it. If you've got experience of a similar software or no experience, you can use the information about the software that they use to try and figure out if you can learn how to use it a little bit. You can get maybe a trial, or you can learn from some tutorials on YouTube. So you can actually make some progress towards it. You want to try and get as far up that pyramid as you possibly can to make your answer strong as possible. Some other things you want to talk about is talk about what knowledge you have. If you don't have very much knowledge, then you can improve that by actually learning bookkeeping. And then the next thing you can do is try and practice with it. If you find out what one they've got and is the one that they use as bookkeeping, see if you can get a free trial of it. A lot of these bookkeeping softwares give free trials of the more basic self-employed type systems, so you can actually practice some bookkeeping. If you've got experience, talk about it. Talk about exactly what you did and all the functions that you used, and link it to the job you're applying to. And ideally, if you have lots of experience, you can talk about some of the advanced features. So you can do journal entries, payroll, accounting, VAT or sales tax, some other things that you may have some experience of. Just go as far as possible, even if it's not strictly relevant to accounts payable. Just talk about everything that you have experience of, and that will make your answer stronger. Some typical accounting software that's used is you've got Xero, Sage. Sage is usually the market leader in the UK and Europe. QuickBooks by Inuit, Free Agent, Wave. These are some common ones. There's lots of them out there, but these are some of the main systems. And make sure you've got some experience or tried at least some of these out and figured out how they work. So that's how you answer that question. Let's move on to another really important question, which is, what would you do if you thought we had been underbilled? This could be something like receiving an invoice for 11,000 when it should in fact have been 110,000. And of course, if you just pay that invoice knowing that it should be 110,000, you're going to create a lot of problems for the company. And actually that invoice hasn't really been paid. You've only paid a fraction of it, and it's going to cause all sorts of problems down the road. So you have to actually do something about it. It's not something that can be ignored and something that you can just say, well, it's their mistake, we'll just pay them what they've asked for and ignore it. That's not the right way to do it. The first thing you mention when you're answering this question is you say that you will follow company policy, because it might be that what you did in your previous role and what this company does, it has a different procedure. It might be at a previous company, you had the authority to just liaise with the vendor and contact them and do all sorts of other things. But it may be that this new company that has to go through a specific process is totally different. So start by saying that you will follow the company policy, not your own policy, not your previous company's policy. You will follow the policy of the company that is employing you. The next thing you have to do is you make sure the issue is clearly recorded so people are aware of it. You also raise it with line management. This is a very large sum of money in my example here. The line management will want to be aware of this issue. Managers generally want to be made aware of things. They don't want big problems to suddenly appear out of nowhere. They want to see the problem a mile away so that action can be taken. And then you also talk about the importance of good vendor relationships. If you were to pay that 11,000 invoice, knowing that they'd invoiced the wrong amount, deliberately doing it, and there was a record of you having said that it's the wrong amount, but you deliberately ignored it, that's going to really upset the vendor, because that's a very simple mistake. And the chances are that they will probably notice it. Their accountants will spot it, and they'll know that you also did nothing about it. And they will think that obviously you probably should have known that. So you're going to really harm that relationship, which is not a good thing to do. So to answer this, simple 4 things you discuss in detail: following the company's policies, how you record the issue, raising it with management, and maintaining good vendor relationships. And that will get you through this question. Let's look at the next one, which is, can you tell me about your employment? This question is one that you absolutely must plan for. If you don't plan for it, you're going to miss loads of opportunities to show off experience. And quite often people answer this really badly. They just give a list of all the jobs that they did in just 1-2 rubbish sentences that don't tell you very much, that really isn't very helpful. This is your opportunity to show off that you have loads of great experience. Whatever it is, make sure you take advantage of it. It could be any job you've ever had, because you learned something and you did stuff and you got some experience and you want to show that off. In this question, you want to show off as much relevant experience as you can. Show that you've had no previous issues, that you've maintained good relationships with your employers, and you've got a good track record. Any commercial experience at all that you have, make sure you discuss it. It doesn't matter if it's not Accounts payable, any experience in the commercial world, dealing with customers, dealing with anything financial, anything money moving around is good, useful experience to talk about. Make sure you use all of your experience to its full potential. If you can get those main things in, you're starting to look like a good hire. When you answer this question, there's 4 things you want to talk about. Firstly, start by saying what your job titles are. Tell them what your title is and make sure you think about what the correct title is. What's the best title for your job that was actually your job? What were your responsibilities? What were you accountable for? What did you actually do in that job? It's not just enough to say, my job title was this. What did you actually do? What was this job? What responsibilities and power did you have in that job? The next thing you can do is when you're telling the story of one job to the next, you might want to put in good reasons why you left. So if you moved up the way, if you moved location, that's a good reassurance that you left on good terms. And then you always want, at the end of each job, to use one sentence to link it to accounts payable. How is this job going to make you better at accounts payable? What experience did you get that is relevant to accounts payable? Some top tips for success: emphasize you left on good terms. So all of your jobs, you have positive relationships, that you could return to those jobs. You're very confident that the companies would have you back because they have a positive view of you, and you can back that up with references. You want to make clear links to accounts payable and emphasize strongly any commercial experience, because any commercial experience is useful to accounts payable. And this is how you answer the employment history question, and make sure you use an opportunity to show off your experience. And then we can look at the next one, which is a technical question that you have to absolutely get right. If you don't know this, there's a problem, which is, what is the difference between accounts payable and accounts receivable? This is, of course, a super important question to get right. It's often asked because if people get it wrong, that's a good indication that maybe they don't know enough to actually be applying for this job. So make sure you're clear on it. I'll run through it very quickly. It is very simple. Payable means to do with payments. Money's going out in accounts payable. Accounts payable is dealing with invoices, actually paying those invoices. It's money owed to other people. So it's not money owed to the company. It's money the company owes to others and has to be paid. And these represent liabilities that the company has. Accounts receivable, totally different. That is to do with money actually coming into the business. That's the people who send out the invoices. So as an accounts payable clerk, you will spend a lot of your time talking to accounts receivable clerks at other companies. They're the people that send you the invoices. It's to do with money owed to you. So if you're working in accounts receivable, people are paying money. You're collecting in money, which got collections involved. And receivables are assets to a business. Payables are liabilities. So if you're asked about accounts payable, talk about money going out, that it's to do with paying invoices. It's managing money that is owed to other people and making sure that a business is paying its suppliers, for example, and it is managing the company's liabilities. So make sure you're clear on that. If you are, that's great. The next thing you have to be clear about, and this one is much more complicated, which is the difference between a debit and a credit. Obviously, you will need to know this for your interview, and if you don't know the answer, you're going to look very silly. So I'm going to run through the things that you need to say in your answer to be able to answer this question. If you don't know anything about this, you really need to research it and make sure you're clear on the difference before you go to your interview. So start by looking at what debits are, and then we will look at what credits are. So debits, when you give the definition, they represent a transfer of value to the account. You will always find them on the left of an accounting ledger, and they are positive numbers. Credits are the opposite. They represent a transfer in value from the account. See that debits are to, and then the credits are from. That's one of the key differences. They are found on the right of an accounting ledger, and they are negative numbers. So if you're asked, this is the basic structure of your answer. You define the debits, define the credits, say where they are, and say which is positive and negative. Then you need to know how they actually affect the accounts. And the way to do that is to remember the phrase dealer and actually run through what dealer means. And I'll show you what that is. So debits increase 3 things, and that is the first 3 letters of dealer. These are the main accounts that are used. So you've got dividends, expenses, and assets. See that DEA as the first 3 of dealer. Debits are on the left. The first ones are on the left in that list. So if you are debiting these accounts, you will see an increase. Credits, on the other hand, increase liabilities, equity, and revenue. That is the other side. Credits are on the right, the remaining three are on the right. So you can talk about what was on the last slide and then run through the dealer's list. If you are not super confident on this, this is something you need to research and make sure you are confident before your interview. The next question I want to run through is what makes a good accounts payable clerk? And there are certain characteristics that contribute to being really good at this job. And there's 5 words that I want you to use in the interview, and you want to talk around each of these words. So diligent is extremely important. You have to be very, very accurate in all of the work that you are doing. It's very important that the correct amount of money is paid and the correct invoice is paid to the correct person. You have to be very efficient. You have to get things done. You need to get through perhaps a large number of invoices, and you have to do that accurately and quickly. You have to be trustworthy. You're potentially dealing with very large amounts of money, and they want someone that they can actually trust with such an important function in a business. You have to be also super organized. You need to know what money needs to be paid and when and who you're paying. You have to have this all very, very well organized, and you have to be reliable. If you don't have a good accounts payable system and good people in that department, it's going to do a lot of damage to your company. So it's a very important function. So make sure when you're answering this question, you use these 5 words, and then you'll be successful on this question. And lastly, before we finish, I want to take you through some good questions that you could ask at the end of the interview. So you can ask them, what software and systems does your company use to manage accounts payable? And you can link that to a commitment to actually really learn these, go away and practice them and do some research on them to make sure you're well prepared for starting. Show that enthusiasm. You can also follow that up with, what should a new hire in the department do now to be well prepared for starting? Because there's going to be a slight gap between your interview and actually starting the job, and you can use that time to get ahead and be prepared. And if you say that, it's making a commitment, and it shows that you take your job seriously and you're willing to work outside of your hours to be super good at your job. That's not always going to be expected, but when you're starting, make sure you really care about making a good first impression. The next question you can ask is, what CPD and training opportunities does your company provide to support the development of your staff? Show that you really care about continuing professional development and you want to actually get better and better at your job. You can also ask, how would you characterize the ideal accounts payable clerk? And you can engage in a discussion about your previous answers and how you meet what they are looking for. Make sure you can link to the job description as well and the characteristics and skills you have and how that matches up. And lastly, you want to invent one question on the day, perhaps something specific about the company or something you've noticed or that has been mentioned in the interview. Show you're listening, show that you're engaging in a two-way conversation and you're really switched on. And if you do that, your chances of success are going to be much higher. So I hope this video has been very helpful to you. I'd appreciate if you post in the comments what questions you were asked in your interview and your interview experience, because that helps everyone else out. And finally, thank you very much for watching.